We force his king into opposition and deliver checkmate. Hello and welcome back to the Chess Mindset. In this video, I'll be showing you how to checkmate with just a king and a rook. Now, I'm going to be showing you two methods, and the first one is going to be the easiest method, which any of you can basically follow. And the second one's going to be a little bit more intermediate, but you can still follow it if you do it properly, which I'm going to be teaching you how to. So the first method is called the opposition method, and the way to remember this is when the kings are in opposition. So let's say my king was on this square right now, then that would be in opposition of his other king. So I'm just going to show you how to do that first. Now, the first thing we want to do is we want to make sure that the rook is cutting off their king. And we want to basically force the king into the edge. So let's say we want to force the king to the H file. So basically the way we're going to do that is, well, first of all, we're going to cut it off from this file, and gradually we're going to move our rook closer and closer so that the king will also move, and eventually it will reach the H file. So the way we do that is, so let's say, right, the king wants to go for our rook. Now, we can just move our rook away, right, all the way here, so that the king just basically is not in time to reach our rook. And from this moment, we want the kings to be in opposition. So, let's say they play king here. Well, now the kings are in opposition, and when that happens, we can bring our rook one square over, and now notice how the king can't reach these squares because our king is watching there, right? And it can't go to these squares because the rook is watching. So it has to move into the next file. Okay, and at this point, we just have to repeat that process. Okay, so put the king in opposition, and it has to be our move, remember. So when the kings are in opposition, we have to, it has to be our turn to move so that we can play the rook over one square. So in this case, it's their move. So they're going to try to reach our rook. And basically, when they attack our rook, all we're going to do is bring our rook all the way to the other side. Okay, now if he plays king up, that's going to be in opposition, and then we can slide our rook. So our opponent doesn't want to do that. So they're going to go over even more. But we can just follow with our king. And now he has to move his king into opposition. And that's when we can slide our rook over, and notice how these squares are unavailable, these squares are unavailable, so the king has to move back. Okay, so basically we just repeat this process until the king reaches the last file, and then I'll show you how to do it one more time. So once again, the king will want to go for our rook, so we'll just move it all the way back, and after we reach opposition again, we just slide the rook over again. Now the king has to move back, and each time we do that, we just bring the king into opposition again, so that whenever his king moves, wherever his king moves, I should say, we just bring it back into opposition. Now, of course, he's gonna want to escape the opposition, so all we gotta do is wait for him to bring his king into opposition, and it's our move, and then we can just bring our rook over one more time, and then it's checkmate. So basically we just repeat this process all the way until the last file, and then we can deliver checkmate. So right now it's black's move, he doesn't want to go there, otherwise he'll get checkmated, so he wants to go back. We just follow him, okay, all the way until here where he has to move here, and now we can deliver the final blow, checkmate. Okay, so that is the opposition method. Now, the way to remember this, as I said, is just if the king is like this, for example, okay, if the kings are facing each other, then that is opposition. So that's basically what you want to achieve. And we just repeat this process until the king reaches the edge of the board, and then we do the opposition one more time, and then we can deliver checkmate with the rook. So, for example, like this. Okay, so keep bringing the king closer and closer to the edge of the board until we deliver checkmate like that. Okay, so now let's move on to the second method, and this is called the box method. Now this one is a little bit trickier to sort of like execute, but it is still pretty simple to understand. I would say the opposition method is a little bit simpler to execute because it's pretty methodical and you can basically know like what each move is pretty much like easily. But for this one, it does require a little bit of intuition. So what this one is it's basically the same thing, but now we got to think on another lens. So instead of pushing the king to an edge, right, where the rook is covering this file and we're trying to like push the king to the edge of the board, now we're going to think in terms of a box. So this rook is basically covering the king inside this little box right here. Okay, so and what we want to do is we want to basically make the box as small as possible until basically the king is basically confined into a small space, and then we can deliver checkmate. So the way we're going to do this, so the king is always going to try to go after our rook, right? Because if they don't try to go for our rook, we can just make the box closer, right? And we can just keep doing that. So the king will always try to attack our rook, and when the king does that, just remember we can just move the rook like away, and then it's kind of like the opposition method all over again, right? We're just basically restricting the king, but then we can just bring our king over. So this one, it does require you to bring your king over quite early, and what we're going to do is we're going to use our king to protect our rook. So now the box is set and we have our king protecting our rook. So his king can only move like, let's say here, and now we can bring our rook here and make the box even smaller, right? And so his king can only move here. Now we can't bring our rook like here because the king will just take. So we need to slide our king over one tile. Okay, and now he can only move, well, I guess he can move here again to attack our rook, but then we just move our king again. Okay, and notice how his king can only move here now, and then we slide our rook over one more time, and this is the box right now. It's only 3 squares. Okay, so he can only move here, and we're going to make the box even smaller. We're going to push his king until he only has like 2 squares left. So now he can go here. We move our king again. Okay, king goes here, move our rook here. Okay, there's 2 squares left. He has to go here, and now there's basically nowhere for his king to go except for this square, so he has to go here. Now we can't deliver checkmate just yet. Okay, we have to waste a move, and basically all we got to do is move our king one more time. Okay, his king can only move here, and now move our rook all the way down so that wherever his king goes, okay, let's say here, well, actually we don't need to do that. We can just move our king here. Okay, when he goes king there, move our king here. Okay, actually no, move our king here, and now when his king moves here, bring our rook down. Okay, and if he goes here, then all we got to do is checkmate. So this is basically the same as the opposition sort of tactic. I guess you could frame it as the opposition tactic. There is a case where, you know, his king is here and then we can just checkmate here, but that requires a tactic called triangulation, which is a little bit advanced for this video. So before, like, I guess you could move here to sort of triangulate so that on this move we can move our king and then he has to move and then we can checkmate. But that is a little bit advanced. I was going to talk about that, but I realized it might be a little bit advanced for this sort of video. So in that case, all we got to really do is think of it as the opposition method. Okay, put our rook here, and then when the kings face each other, then we can just deliver checkmate, just like that. So it is pretty similar to the opposition method. The only difference is how we get the king to, I guess, the corner, or you can say the last file. And that's using the box method, basically. Now, I'm going to be showing you 2 examples using both of these methods, just so you can see what it looks like in action. Okay, so now we're playing against the maximum elo on chess.com, which is 3,200. So basically there will be no mistakes allowed in this demo. So I'm going to start with the opposition method, which is, remember, we're going to force the king to one edge of the board. In this case, we'll force it to this edge, the H file. So remember, we want the kings to be in opposition. So all we have to do is make sure that his king is facing our king. So he's attacking our rook. So all we got to do is move it here. Okay, now we see that it's opposition. So we move our rook one square here. Okay. Attacking our rook again. So we bring it all the way here. Okay. Now here's a tip, right? Notice how if we move our king here, he's going to try and move away, and that's going to escape opposition. Whereas if I just waste a move here with my rook, then his king has to make his move, and that's when I use opposition. Okay, so same thing here. Waste a move. Okay, and now we get opposition again. Okay, try to get opposition again. Now he's attacking our rook, so we just move it there. And we can waste the move again. Okay, bring our king over. Whenever he attacks our rook, we can just slide it all the way back. And the way you know if you need to waste the move is if you move your king and it reaches opposition, then you need to waste the move because we need them to make the move into opposition. So now we move our king here, and this is the final opposition, and we could just deliver a checkmate like that. Okay, so that is the opposition method. Let's try the box method now. So remember, the box method is basically keeping the king inside this box and making this box smaller and smaller until we can do the final opposition tactic on the final file, basically. Now, if they're attacking our rook and our king's not there yet, then we can just move our rook. Okay. And basically what you want to do is, if you can't move your rook closer to create a smaller box, so in this case, if I move my rook here, the king is just gonna escape this way, right? So I can't do that just yet. So all I gotta do is move my king again. Okay, and whenever I can move my rook closer to create a smaller box, that is when I do it. Okay, so here I can still make the box smaller with this move. Okay, now here I can't because the king will just take, right? So I just move my king. Okay. Create the smaller box, move my king again, create the smaller box, move my king again, and again. And now the king is forced into these two squares, right? And now we can just use opposition, right? It's basically the first tactic that we learned. So move the rook away, okay, keep the king on this file, okay, and then just move the king until we force his king into opposition and deliver checkmate. So those were the two ways to deliver checkmate with king and rook. Now, this is a sort of beginner type of concept, and if you want to see more videos like these where I explain these sort of checkmate patterns, maybe like even harder checkmate patterns like two bishops or even bishop and knight, then be sure to like and subscribe and let me down in the comments below. Now, I've also created a chess community that you can join, and that's linked in the first link in my bio, so go and check that out. And I'll see you in the next video. Goodbye.